Good evening to all you illustrious readers of everything printed. Right now it's time to do a little dispatch. I used this bookmark for the 2020 census. I want to do a little video about the Messiah of Stockholm. The Messiah of Stockholm is a vintage paperback. On the front you see a price for $5.95, which means that this was probably a printing that came out somewhat close to the book's original publication date of 1989. The Dictionary of the Khazars, a lexicon novel by Milorad Pavic, came out in 1988. And The Runaway Robot by Lester Del Rey for 50 cents came out in 1965. What do people use these things for? You know, they say BIC on them. What does that mean? Reading The Messiah of Stockholm out loud for too long, and there are some parts of this book you're gonna want to read out loud. For instance, Chapter 13. Chapter 13 has this cool heart penned in by the number. You might want to have a Ricola to help your voice heal. I read reviews online that complained that this book was overly literary and kind of try-hard, a little too compressed and intense. But when you think about that it's a book about Bruno Schultz, all of that compression and intensity makes a lot of sense. When I was reading the book, I just took the liberty of underlining a lot. I recently reviewed my copy of Thomas Brown's Urn Burial. I was recently looking at my copy of Religio Medici and seeing a bunch of underlines that I liked. And I thought, you know what, I want to get back to that. And so I decided to underline when I read through this one. We're looking at 144 pages for this one, a slender book, kind of a Jamesian novella length. Much is made of the fact that Ozick is a James scholar. And this is kind of like your aspirin papers turn of the screw type length novel. So if you like that length, and that isn't slender but just right for you, go ahead and pick up this novel. Can anybody tell me another book where this font is used? These tall letters with this really close underline under it. I think it's a beautiful cover, and it might be a little too on the nose. Nah, it's great. It's a beautiful illustration title. I happen to agree with Mona Simpson, but I think hilarious may not be right. I always enjoy the beginnings of books, and I enjoy the middles of books. I don't like the conclusions of books. I wish that every book could just be cut in half, because then I would be saved the arduous task of reading the second half of a book where I literally I couldn't care less how things turn out. When I was halfway through reading this book, I was really comforted by going to the front and looking at this Bruno Schultz self-portrait. There you see some notes bleeding through. The book is dedicated to Philip Roth. This book did not come out in 1989. A bunch of you have probably already yelled at me in the comments, but here you've got 1987 actually, and the Vintage Books edition didn't come out till 1988. A Stage Frenzy, willed, directed, cued. Again, a lot of people consider this book a little bit overwritten or something, or overwrought, and that's stupid. And what are you? By religion? A bookseller. I read this book very quickly, and my favorite things were the descriptions of the working life of the protagonist, Lars. I loved Chapter 13, and you're gonna love Chapter 13 too. I was a big fan of my nice shiny edition, the way it felt in my hands. I liked it when the characters said things like, "Heaven help us." I liked the backstory of the manuscript that you get before it's found. I truly enjoyed the mention of Sao Paulo. It's a really great book about what it's like to read a book, to want to read a book, to want to find a book. But really it's about what it's like to be an offspring and a latent arsonist. As a book to read out loud, I give it a 8 out of 10. Just maybe don't read out loud the dialogue parts, just because those could get tedious. But basically every other paragraph is a 10 out of 10. Read it out loud, enjoy it. Sometimes when you're starting out reading a book, you're gonna underline stuff that seems significant to you, but then the book, because you're underlining on a first read, which is generally a no-no, will go on to reiterate those things time and time again, so you'll look like an idiot for having underlined it when that's totally unnecessary. You know what I mean? Gunnar Hemling and Anders Fiskingol, who are the co-workers of Lars, are fun to look at. And what a tone does this epigraph set. This was just a first read, but the conclusion of the book was kind of like mild babble to me, which is fine, because as I say, I don't care about conclusions. Thank you to the person who recommended this book to me. That's Donald Kelly. Thank you for recommending that I read this. Maybe the ending of the book was too happy? Although it ends with a character in despair and grieving. Do I think of nothing else except how much I enjoyed this book? I really enjoyed the book. I think that Cynthia Ozick really is a great writer and everything, and she takes all of everyone's good habits and keeps them, and I feel like she gets rid of a lot of bad habits that people have. I like how when she describes a character who's arriving on the scene, she sometimes goes a little overboard. A long tumescent head, a scanty lump of cartilage, tobacco strong and salty. I recommend this novel to anybody who doesn't mind their books to be a bit literary, and anyone who is interested in Bruno Schultz, and anyone who likes a hunt for a missing text as a plot device. I recommend it to anyone who doesn't want to sit through Ozick's first novel, Trust, yet. Hopefully I'll get to Trust soon, but anyway, sorry I don't have any more fully formed thoughts on this. I just got a lot of underlines and a good memory of enjoying myself reading this one, so that's what I've got to share with you today. Thanks again for the rec, and thanks for Cynthia for the book, and everybody have a good evening.